Welcome, everybody, to this World Satsanga held on the 27th of March 2024 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Kevin Moore Show. And as usual, I encourage you to visit his YouTube site, The Kevin Moore Show, where he continues his docu-series, They Call Us Channelers, where he's interviewing other individuals who are able to connect to the greater reality through various different means and measures, including things like meditation or other forms of channeling. This particular lecture is all about understanding where religion comes from, in so much as why it's created in the first place. Now, religion is such that it causes lots of problems around the world, specifically because we are basically indoctrinated into the thought process that a particular religion is the only religion, the only true way. And in my understanding, that's not specifically correct. The different religions have been created by mankind, basically, and initially an individual who was able to connect to the greater reality and had the capability of teaching others to experience what they were experiencing. There's various different ways of doing this. The Buddha had a version of his own, Muhammad had a version, Christ had a version. They range from just being of service and being a good citizen and meditating to being a renunciant and being a hermit and creating the connectivity through being withdrawn from society of all sorts, whether it's a large city, a large country, or from a small village. Basically, making a condition where you are able to go within yourself rather than without yourself. So if we look at the star process, we look at the ability for somebody to understand how to connect to the greater reality, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through channeling, whether it's through astral traveling, whether it's through samadhi, whether it's just through attempting to find a state of beingness. Individuals throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, have found ways to do this and have been able to teach individuals. Now, if we look at, for example, Christianity as an example, we had a rather well-known figure called Jesus who taught various different ways to live, to be of service, and also to consider how to be a good citizen, how to be of service to others, and therefore how to reduce the karmic effect. If you look at Hinduism, for example, that's looking at different ways in which you can detach from the material world. And of course, the different yogas are a route towards going from the gross physical aspect of mastering the body all the way through to the metaphysical or spiritual aspect of mastering the body through things like Raja Yoga and Kriya Yoga. In the past, these individuals were capable, as I've just said, of connecting to the greater reality and showing that if an individual was able to detach themselves from their material desires, which is basically karma, so that they could go within themselves, they could also experience what the master was experiencing, but they had to do it in a certain way. Now, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, we were in a significantly lower state of frequential level worldwide, both from our environment and us as individuals, than we are now, although we have dropped in the last 12 years. And it's quite obvious that we've dropped in the last 12 years by what's happening around the world. But in essence, these individuals suggested that you had to use their methodology. And this methodology was the only way to liberation of the soul, to self-awareness and connectivity to the greater reality. And this was a function of the lower frequencies. It was a case of you have to do it this way, you can't divert, because if you divert, you dilute the teaching, you dilute the ability to connect, and at best it might take you all your life to connect. Whereas if you followed the route directly and you're diligent and devoted, then you would manage to get connectivity in a shorter period, maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe instantaneously, or maybe it took 10 or 20 years. It's quite common for yogis to state that it took them, quarter of their life or more to be able to enter into the state associated with being able to connect with the greater reality, whether they're connecting with their higher selves, whether they're connecting with source or God, whether they're moving beyond source or God into that other volume of space that is actually part of our creator's creator, the origin, what the Hindus call the absolute, or all there is. So we have a particular leader who's taught a way, and because he or she knows that it works, they teach that particular way and state that you have to follow it exactly this way. Mankind perpetuates this process. Now, if we have the ways taught by Muhammad, the ways taught by Judaism, the ways taught by Christ, the ways taught by the Buddha, all of these different ways originally had somebody at the start, or a group of devotees at the start, who were able to achieve this and understood the various different ways that were available to them and the ways that worked for them. So you can start to see you've got 4 or 5, perhaps even more, different ways to connecting to source, or roads to God, basically. The issue is that when we got the passage of time, that we start to get a humanization of these roads. You must do this, you must do that, you must live in this way, you must behave in this way, you must eat these certain foods, you must spend time meditating. And it becomes dictatorial rather than educational. And when it becomes dictatorial, you start to see that the people who are in the leadership role, although originally many generations back, that methodology of connecting to source or God was there with them, excuse me, eventually the new individuals, although they're taught, are not capable of connecting themselves. So they understand the regime surrounding the ability to connect with source or God, but they can't achieve it themselves. And so the ability for the students to connect with source or God becomes reduced as well. And eventually all we get is a control medium using the process of connecting to source or God, but not able to do it. And what's more, we get schools of thought. Those schools of thought come from the various different religions because their way is the best. They have been told they have to follow a particular route to enlightenment. They've been told to defend this route. That being, they have to fight within themselves, not fight anybody else, to achieve a robust methodology using this way, the process that they've been taught through their particular religion by their original founder, that allows them to become connected to source whilst they're still incarnate. So we start to get aggression between different camps of process of connectivity, because they've been taught that you have to follow this way and you have to defend this way, you have to fight for this way. But fighting for this way is within the self, not without the self, not with other groups. So in essence, we have to respect other groups, other religions, and their processes, and go back to the source of where they were taught all those generations ago, and start to recalibrate ourselves with the original concept, rather than the humanized concept, which is creating ego. Yeah, my way is better than yours. My way is faster than yours. You can't get to where you're going to with this. You must come and join us. All of these things are ego, based upon individuals who get into leadership positions and use that leadership position to augment their own status. So rather than creating the potential to educate others, share with them the real way in which their original founder was able to connect to source, connect to the greater reality, move their sentience out of their body and move through the different universal realms associated with the multiverse and connect with source, and maybe even the origin. They just use it as a control medium. So we need to start primarily to respect the fact there's been different different leaders, avatars, if you want to call them that, ascending masters, if you want to call them that, who've been able to do this, who've been able to connect and go back to what they were originally teaching, stripping out the humanized preferences or reasons for control, using these processes as a method of control, and go right back to the start. And it doesn't matter who's taught it. It doesn't matter what the processes are. If they work, they work. And we can all become connected to source using the various different methods that are there, whether it's through meditation, mediumship, channeling, yoga, whether it's Kriya Yoga or Raja Yoga, whether it's a pranayama-based condition, whether it's being of service, whether it's being a renunciant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who your deity is, who your leader was originally. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the way in which the information is transferred that's created the problems over the centuries, over the millennia, not the original teaching, not the original instructor, not the original guru, not the original sifu, not the original sensei, not the original teacher. So if we can respect these different routes and strip away the hundreds or thousands of years of humanization, we can get back to the very processes, and we can identify them as being, these are different processes. That choose which one works for you and use it, and not get associated with the ego that's got to defend a certain way or say this way is better than that. They're all good. They all get you there. The route to connectivity with source depends upon the self. Which route is best for you? Which works for you? How dedicated are you? How devoted are you to connecting? So the speed at which you get there is up to you, not depending upon which particular route is chosen. You choose the route that works with you. It's like being at school. Certain teachers can teach you something, others can't, because they don't understand the different ways in which you learn. They have a set way of teaching us. And some people can latch onto that teaching and thrive and pass examinations. Some just find it's confusing. And it's only when they change teachers or change faculty that they're able to, oh, that's how it works. And then they start to thrive. So you choose your teacher based upon how you feel about it. You choose your route to God about how you feel about it, whether it works for you, whether you're encouraged by it, whether you're attracted to it, not because of whether it's better than something else, it's whether it works for you. And so respect there are different ways. Respect that there are ways that work for you and ways that don't work for you. But if it works for somebody else, that's fantastic. Yeah. There might be 4 different ways and 4 different people have those 4 different ways, and only one of those ways would work for them. But if all 4 of them choose a different way and they all reach enlightenment at the same time, isn't that wonderful? So let's consider that the very start point of any process that's created the need to work in a certain way, albeit very blinkered, and sometimes it's necessary to focus directly on this way, are all relevant. And so we can move forwards, not in an aggressive or a judgmental or a rejectional sort of way about another religion, which is a process or a function of a known way to communicate and connect with source and the greater reality around it. But we can respect them as being valid. We can move forwards and understand that there's these different ways and they all work, but we don't need to get involved with the humanization. We don't need to get radical about it. We don't need to get we don't need to justify it. We don't need to defend it. All we need to say is this is available if you want to use it. There's a way of living with this as well, if you work with it, where you can strip it back to the bare bones of the process and use that, which I would suggest is the way forwards. But that doesn't mean you can't still understand some of the humanized parts of it and maybe live that way. But in living that way, you should need to detach from the judgmental side of other ways. Just accept that there are other ways in which you can work and you can connect with source, and they're all relevant. And so let's rejoice in the fact that there are many ways to source, there are many ways to God, and they're all relevant, but we need to strip away the humanization. Let's move on to the questions and answers. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the World Satsanga questions. Actually, these questions have been asked prior to the live streaming of the World Satsanga, and I've decided to answer these now ahead of the live streaming, primarily because there's going to be a lot of questions, I've no doubt, and also these questions require a little bit more thought process or connectivity, which I don't tend to get when I'm doing the questions and answers in a live streaming, so I have to get the information rather quickly, so I can't do them justice. So the first one's from Bill. Why did masters like Jesus bother to come to Earth 2,000 years ago to impart profound knowledge and then leave with no further action? Given humanity's ensuring propensity to kill itself by the millions, what's the point of Jesus coming in the first place? Why no follow-through? Well, there has been other masters who've come, who've tried to lead us and show us the way. In between the time of Jesus and even the Buddha and Muhammad, etc., but they haven't been as prominent. And also, once we are given the way, really, provided those individuals who understood the way to basically end up having a direct level of connectivity with their own higher selves or their true energetic selves or source, and they'll being able to move their consciousness or their sentience into the multiverse at will, then one would argue that the information is given to them and that they can broadcast this and teach others in a faithful way. And if you look at Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the things he said was that when he would finish his incarnation here, there would be nobody else to follow him. And that was because he felt that there should be no other gurus as such. They should follow the exact process that he taught his followers or his students. And that's the same with Jesus. It's the same with the Buddha. It's the same with Muhammad. Any of the true paths to self-awareness or enlightenment, if given to the right individual, should be passed on, provided the process is exactly the same throughout the millennia. The only issue is that over the years, that a lot of the individuals who were taught were teaching people who were, I'm going to call it substandard, or weren't capable enough to be as pure as they were. And so the level of purity of the teacher dropped off, and therefore the level of the understanding of the teachings disappeared, and the capability of being able to connect and know who and what we are disappeared as well. So in effect, what's happened is that it's all disappeared into the background because of the dilution effect of leaders using it for power rather than for the understanding of others in understanding who and what they are. And so there's a level of, from these masters, of, we've shown you the way, it's up to you, because that's part of our free will. It's like everything else. We can only do what we can do. We can't be given everything on a plate, and so we have to earn our level of connectivity, our level of self-awareness or self-realization. And if we can't do it ourselves, if we have to be led by the nose, so to speak, then really we're not understanding it at all. So that's why they give us the chance to use our individualized free will to follow those guidances. Next question from Billy. Scientists tell us there are probably 100 billion or more galaxies in the physical universe, of which the Milky Way is one. Does that mean there are at least 100 billion planets supporting sentient life? If so, are they all as dysfunctional as planet Earth, or some better than ours? There's more than billions, there's trillions, because there's more than 100 billion based upon the capacity of the physical universe in the gross physical aspect of it, the first three frequencies. There's billions of galaxies and therefore systems and planetary systems in each frequential layer above the first three. So if you go to the 12th frequency within the physical universe. There isn't any darkness in between, because it's absolutely full of galactic systems, nebulae, and local areas where sentience can incarnate into and associate it with, and therefore experience, learn, and evolve. And yes, there are others like us, like who are struggling, and there are others who've reached self-awareness and self-enlightenment. And actually, there are civilizations on Earth who, in the past or other event spaces, have in fact reached and achieved enlightenment. And it's just that the cycle continues as we are here, and we're allowed to be here and experience individualized free will. Depending upon how we interact with each other, depends upon how we continue to provide an environment for individualized free will, and trying to create an understanding of who and what we are, and connectivity, and being able to navigate through our incarnation in a karma-free way. And so at some point, we will all collectively do it together. And when that happens, there's no need for us to be here, because we'll be incarnating in higher frequencies. So the answer to the question is, some are dysfunctional, some are a lot better than others, and some are significantly better than others. Next question is from Miriam. The question is about the psychic shield. How should I know if I have attachment or new attachments? How can attachments affect our lives? If you've got, for instance, an energetic hook in you, then you tend to find that you are being subservient to somebody else and trying to please them without getting any benefit of pleasing them. For instance, they'll ask you to do things that they wouldn't do themselves, and then don't give you any praise for it, or any positive reaction for it. But also, if you've got astral entities attached to you, you'll probably find that some part of your body feels wrong. It feels heavy, for instance. You don't feel that you're the same. You don't feel that you're right. And also you feel that you're very tired as well. So that's how you know if you've got any astral entities attached to you, and how maybe you're being coerced into doing things that you shouldn't be. But also, if you feel stabbing pains in the body sometimes for no reason at all, that's usually a case that somebody's not very happy with you and throwing energy at you. That's a direct energetic attack. The next question is it possible to remove spirit attachment by asking it from the band of mercy in the name of Jesus Christ, or is it possible to remove some of the negative energies by asking it from appropriate archangels and angels in the name of Jesus Christ? That's sort of removing one's responsibility by dealing with it ourselves. They will probably respond, if you are focused enough in your meditation, by helping you out, and then maybe they will give you a process for doing it. But at the end of the day, if you can use a process yourself that allows you to be self-contained and self-aware at the same time, and also self-able to remove entities or remove connections between yourself and others, or even remove karmic links, and remove addictions by using the psychic shield to anything that's gross physical, then it's better to do it that way, in a robust and repeatable way, than it is to ask for help from other entities to do it. Clearly, there's an age-old thought process that suggests that if you surround yourself in light and ask for the power of the source or the power of Jesus or other deities or other ascended masters, you will get help. You will. But at the end of the day, this is only generalized help. It's not specific to what you might be experiencing in terms of coercion, energetic attack, energetic hooks, or particular astral entities that are taking energy from you, either from your directly from your energy templates or from your chakras. Okay. Next and last question is a ringing sound in one ear a sign of changing in our energy or any other sort of attachment? No, ringing signs in the ears are a change of your elevation in terms of your frequency. It's a sign of ascension, and usually it's in one ear. Sometimes it's the left. With other people, it's the right, and with rare people, it ends up being in both ears. But what you're experiencing when you hear this isn't tinnitus. It isn't a function of the middle ear going wrong. It's basically that you're picking up with your mind's ear, your clairaudience, the cumulative base resonant frequencies of all the chakras, which is very good. So what I would suggest you do now is meditate on that ringing in the ears and see if you can separate it out. depending upon which chakra you're focused on. So what I would do to assist in that is use the chakra opening exercises, which are free and available on the website. If you go to the About tab, and then go down to Press Pack, and then go down to the chakra opening exercises, which are also part of the Traversing the Frequencies and also part of the Psychic Shield. And you open up, let's say, the first four chakras, which is the heart chakra level, the fourth level. You will focus on the fourth chakra, and therefore you should be able to separate out the sound of that particular chakra rather than hearing all the chakras concurrently. Okay, let's have a look at Ula's questions now, and she's got 4 questions based upon some of the work on understanding what the Yugas are. She says, I'm reading the Yugas by Joseph Selby, a student of Kriyananda. Interestingly enough, Kriyananda was banished from the Self-Realization Fellowship for, let's say, taking things into his own hands and developing itself beyond what Yogananda taught. So just a little bit of information there. And he's also been accused of sexual misconduct as well. So again, be a bit aware of some of the undercurrents that happen with some of these organizations. And Kriyananda himself created his own organization as a function of being exiled or banished from the Self-Realization Fellowship. Irrespective, he does talk some sense, because of course he was a student, one of the first students of one of the first successful and notable students of Yogananda, which of course includes James A. Lin, who was a really successful yogi and ended up being the first president of SRF after Yogananda left this incarnation. But he talked about divine magnetism, which Yogananda called the power of all powers, which is consciousness and intelligence. What is your understanding of divine magnetism? Is it developed in Trita Yoga or the mental age? It's a function of, in effect, us being in the higher frequencies, where we are starting to become more aware. We're starting to become more capable of connecting with who and what we are. And I mean, I'm going to talk about the Yugas in a general sense in a moment, but basically it's to do with us becoming more connected with the higher frequencies rather than the gross physical. So from that perspective, think of it in that way, and think of it in terms of, it's a time when we are more connected. We are in control of who and what we are. We are mentally capable of manipulating our environment by thought process. So it's more than consciousness and intelligence. It's the full use of our sentience. And divine magnetism is another way of saying, it's another way of using the law of attractivity, which is, in effect, not just attracting wealth to ourselves, but attracting the ability to manipulate our environment, to change our environment, to take, for instance, the atoms associated with a cup or a pencil and change them into a chair or a seat. Okay, so it's beyond the mental age, really, not specifically in the mental age. It's beyond that, because the mental age is all about intelligence and consciousness, whereas we're talking about the full understanding of divine magnetism, and you're into full sentience, which is beyond that. Next question: how would you describe the 4 yugas? Kali, dark age; Dwapara, energy age; Treta, mental age; Satya, or spiritual age, in terms of their frequency levels or frequency ranges. For instance, is Kali Yuga always experienced at frequency level 3? Dwapara energy age at frequency level 4. Treta Yuga at mid to higher 4, frequency level 4, and Satya Yoga at frequency level 5, or even higher in the physical universe. My understanding is the yugas are, in essence, cardinal points. Now, what do I mean by that? They're points in space where the galaxy rotates. The galaxy rotates in space, and within the space of the universe, and certainly the space of the physical universe, there are local areas there are areas of locally high frequency and local areas of locally low frequency. And as the the galaxy rotates naturally, we move through these areas. So when we go through the locally low frequencies, we go through the dark ages. Yeah, we're very medieval, we're very lacking in intelligence, we're very angry and aggressive. When we move out of that area, we move into another area, which is not quite high, but not quite low. So we go into a middle location. We start to go into an energy-based age where we are more capable of understanding who and what we are. We're more able to communicate properly. We're more able to work with things. It's more of a technological age. It's more of a development age, an invention age. Still physical, but more of an invention age. And then we go into a higher frequency where we start to go through the technological age into a more of a self-awareness age, because that's a higher frequency again. And then we go from that, we go to the higher frequencies, which are, self-awareness ages, basically. They're frequencies where we know who and what we are. We incarnate into these frequencies. We still have communication with our higher selves or true energetic selves. We still have communication with source. We can manipulate our environments. We can communicate at will without even using the spoken words. It's all based upon telepathy and beyond telepathy. And we can move our bodies by teleportation, and we can extend the life of the body or reduce the life of the body depending upon whether we have actually finished what we need to do on the planet. So in effect, these are different areas of locally high and locally low frequency that we move through that affect the way we think, behave, and act. And it's not just us that moves through it; it's the whole galaxy. And the galaxy moves through, and other galaxies move through these depending upon where they are in their rotation, and depending upon how the energies within the physical universe move around as well. And according to Sri Yukteswar, who wrote a book called The Holy Science, which went in some way to describe this, not in any massive detail, from what I can remember, but it was good enough to invoke thought processes and potentially those individuals who are capable of channeling the information to get more information themselves. But again, we rotate through them, so that's why we move up and down. And there's some smaller rotations as well that we have. Of course, we have solar systems within the galaxy that move around as well, and that gives us the different ways in which we think, behave, and act if we are incarnating these periods. This is what the Chinese horoscope, the 12 years in the Chinese horoscope, and the 12 months in the standard horoscope are as well. That's all part of that, and the different little ups and downs that are within the bigger ups and downs of frequential change. Next question is, what is the purpose of Satya Yuga, which is a total of 9,600 years where people are engaged in mostly meditation and self-realization? What is the evolutionary content derived from full-time meditation under a spiritual teacher to go to? Oh, I think I'll go through this, but I'm going to go back to it in a moment. What is the evolutionary content derived from full-time meditation under a spiritual teacher to get self-realization versus experiencing life with its challenges in Kali Yuga, which only lasts 2,000 years? Let's go. The purpose of Satya Yoga is simply about where we are position-wise, geo-universally wise within the universe, and whether we're in a locally high frequency or locally low frequency. But from our perspective, incarnating into a body that's got individualized free will in these areas, these locations, these yogas, is about us connecting with our free will, ourselves, and understanding more. Not just about experiencing, but understanding more and working with more and creating more as a function of it. So where people are mostly in meditation, self-realization, they are experiencing the lower frequencies of the physical universe and understanding how they can benefit from it. So gaining self-realization is really about being in a position where we are understanding that we are not the body, we are not the physical environment that we're in, we're beyond that, and helping others to realize it as well. And it can take actually a little bit more than 9,600 years, and it can take less as well. Depends upon how we all work together. But it's really about evolution. It's about seeing how, let's call it how fast we can move beyond the attractions and the limitations of the gross physical and move into the higher frequencies of the physical universe, and therefore no longer needing to incarnate into the lower frequencies, and then move beyond the need to incarnate in the higher frequencies of the physical universe, removing the need to incarnate in the physical universe, in totality. So based upon this, what is the evolutionary content derived from the full-time meditation under a spiritual teacher to get self-realization versus experiencing life with all its challenges in Kali Yoga, which lasts only 2,000 years? It's to accelerate the ability of the soul or the entity and its true energetic self passage through Kali. So basically, we can experience things in the lower frequencies, this Kali Yuga, but why not detach ourselves from it? Why not move ourselves away from it? Why not renounce it and accelerate our passage through it? So in effect, what we're doing is we're moving away from Kali Yuga and in creating a personalized Satya Yuga. We're creating a personalized state where we can come into the incarnation and be a higher frequency, and therefore not need to interact with the lower frequencies and be, in effect, deaf, dumb, and blind, and be body associated. Next part of this is there some association with the evolutionary content accrued versus time spent in each age? There's a depth of evolution experienced. Depending upon the individual, you can either evolve fast with a lower level of quality, or you can evolve slower with a higher level of quality. So the time spent in each age depends upon how much depth of experience we want and how much depth of evolutionary progression we want, how much quality of evolution we want to get. It's the old story about, if you want to travel from New York to Seattle, and the whole point of it, the goal is to get to Seattle. You can go there as fast as possible by flying, and you've achieved the goal. You will evolve as a function of that. But if you want to walk there, or hitchhike there, or catch a bus there, or get trains there, or drive a car there, or motorbike there, or have a combination of all those different types of travel-based modalities, and also maybe even stay in certain locations for a few months or a few years even, these different ways create a potential of the increase in the depth of evolutionary content and therefore an increase in quality. So there is an association that some souls take by staying in these different yugas longer than others, or different ages. Next part of this question is, does a climate or extinction event in the descending Satya Yoga, and there's a figure associated with this, which I'll try to add into the email, okay? Probably try to do a screen grab if I've got time, and therefore a link where people can download this from the YouTube video and or the email as well. So I'll start again. Does a climate or extinction event in a descending Satya Yuga figure really matter if they're at a higher frequency anyway, frequency level 5 or higher? Basically, if you've ascended to a certain point where you know who and what you are, and you can navigate through incarnation without being attracted to the addictions associated with being here, whether it is mental thoughts, behaviors, and actions, thoughts of status, desires for wealth, material wealth, status, then you will survive the descending Satya Yuga, and you'll have moved beyond the need to incarnate in the physical universe. So basically, if you are able to move beyond that and navigate above the frequencies and then master incarnation, it doesn't matter whether any climate or extinction event happens. Some of these things are a function of us. Some of these things are a function of the natural nature of the earth in its cleansing process. So in effect, even though we move down the frequencies through this particular era called the Satya Yuga, we might not get any major climatic events or extinction events. We might just get us having wars with each other, which is another thing that's a potential. But those souls who have mastered incarnation will continue to evolve and move beyond the need to incarnate, or may have already moved beyond the need to incarnate in the physical universe if they've mastered themselves whilst in the higher frequencies and the higher frequency yugas. Next question: I'll start again. How do the Lemurian and Atlantean ages correspond to the yugas? Is the Eden race that you described that sounds like early Lemura, like descending from Satya to Treta Yuga? They were, what I'm understanding is that these were part of the step down functions from the highest frequencies associated with the yugas to the lowest frequencies. And when we come out of the Atlantis period, we go into a sort of a halfway house, which is we're given a chance to recover ourselves by being given an environment that we call the Egyptian period, which was instantaneously created. So we can argue that we were affected by the rotation of the galaxy within these locally high to locally low frequencies, or the gradual movements downwards, because it's all gradually up and gradually down. There's no sort of dramatic downward trend. It's if provided you were incarnate for long enough, you would see the trends and you would know what's happening. But the Atlantean period and the Lemurian period, Mu, and even the Mayan periods are part of certain aspects of civilizations, certainly with the Mayans, even though we were descending the frequencies, still being able to work with themselves and navigate through incarnation and master incarnation, even though we're moving into a lower frequency era. So, but the major civilizations on Earth, like Atlantis or Lemura, were in effect in some of these descending points. And you could argue that the Lemura or the Eden race were descending from Saturn to Treta, yes, because that's where they were. And you could argue that Atlantis was descending into Dwapara because they're going from a higher frequency, which was the astral sort of level, down to the very gross physical or the medieval level, the Dark Ages, you're going to call it that. And that was the full point. But we didn't get to that straight away. As I said, it's a gradual decrease down, and hence we were given the opportunity of recovering ourselves by having the manifestation of the Egyptian period, which did have some effect. It did slow us down, but in essence, we still had this attractivity to being better than somebody else, and therefore having wars with each other. So in essence, these different questions on the yugas are all about physical understandings based upon historical events that show what happens to the human race when the galaxy rotates into these locally high and locally low frequencies. And some of the eras that we've gone through that were recordable in history have been used as examples of where mankind would be had they succumbed to the lower frequencies or started to work with the higher frequencies. And the wheel of the yugas that I'll try to get a screen grab for you and try to give it as a JPEG and therefore put it onto the website as a downloadable link within the text of associated with the Satsanga on YouTube, and also with the emails. You'll be able to see what I mean. The examples that Sri Yukteswar was giving us were based upon known history, not just known history of the Western world, but known history from the Hindus and the Tibetans as well. Now, let's get involved with the rest of the live streamed World Satsanga questions. Now, welcome to you all. I'll have to own up to having a number of pre-submitted questions, which I've already answered because they needed quite a significant amount of detail behind them. So they will not be talked about today. I think there is one that will come through, I think, from another. But the other questions have got quite a bit of content. In fact, it took me half an hour to respond, so I've given them more detail and therefore more focus than I would be allowed to normally in this session. So apologies for that, but they'll be the first part of the recorded questions and answers session. So let's start with where we are now, Vanny. Right. Hello. Would prayer help getting rid of bad karma? Will the good deeds nullify bad deeds, karma from the past? Very, very quickly, prayer is a sort of a lower form of meditation. It's not specifically focused. And what we need to do with prayer is to make it more focused by creating a mantra out of what we're doing. So what I would suggest is that if you use prayer as a start and then you use a mantra in meditation, that's a way of looking at ourselves and deciding that we're going to think, behave, and act in a certain way. And so prayer itself or mantras themselves don't actually get rid of bad karma, because karma is a function of what we've brought through from previous incarnations and how we've interacted with individuals in those previous incarnations within the circumstances and the environments, and what we do in this incarnation with individuals and ourselves in terms of how we think, behave, and act, and how we respond to others. So if we use the meditation as a way of, and a mantra as a way of focusing ourselves to think, behave, and act in a better way, a higher frequency way, a good of service way, then it'll certainly help. So the next part of this is it true that we all come to Earth with a plan of action? Destiny versus free will is in question here. If we can change our plan from before birth, could we do it with prayers and meditation? The life plan is basically a set of goals that we create that we want to experience certain things, but how we do them is up to ourselves. So, for instance, we may want to be a doctor or a sailor or an engineer or a lawyer or a great explorer or a politician, and various different things in between. And the experiences we have in between these goalposts are basically up to us. So the life plan, although it's set in stone, so to speak, if we don't achieve something, it's not a problem. If we don't achieve, for instance, becoming a great lawyer or a great doctor, but we've become something in between, for instance, a notary or somebody who works with the ambulance service, for example, paramedic, that would also assist us in terms of going towards that end goal. So in terms of our life plan, we don't change it, we can't change it whilst we're here, but the quality of it is up to us, and whether we actually get to do it is up to us as well. Okay, thank you, Benny. Right, next question, Andrew Beddle, sorry, excuse me for that. If Earth is a particular and one of a kind place for soul evolution, to me this means that karma we accumulate is peculiar and one of a kind as well. So then if the Earth is suddenly destroyed or the Earth experiment ends, how would we as souls work out our extremely unique Earth-based karma, in brackets, with all the bells and whistles of having had free will, etc.? In essence, we would have to work it out within ourselves and work it out in a different location that gave us similar, but not exactly the same opportunities. If the Earth was destroyed, then clearly every entity that's incarnated here and gained karma as a function of interacting with other individuals in previous incarnations, in this incarnation, would have to work together again to release it, or they could work in the energies to release it, which is very, very rare. It takes a lot longer to do that than it does to come back on Earth, even though it's harder work and lower frequency. But if we went into a different location, different planet where we had not the same level of free will, because in this frequency level, the first three frequencies, the Earth has, the Earth is the only planet where we've got individualized free will. There's another version somewhere else on the fourth frequency, and yet another version on the fifth frequency. But we could potentially go there and certainly work out our karma there, and that's what I'm seeing right now. We could do that, but also we've got other locations which don't have same individualized free will. They have a form of collective will, which may have individualized versions associated with it. And that would be something we could potentially use. But usually we have to come back into the physical universe to eradicate karma, because the physical universe is the only universe where we do accrue karma. It's so difficult to be here and so addictive. Okay, one of Ulla's questions. You said we're in the third multiverse cycle. That's the third evolutionary cycle. Do we go through Lemuria and Atlantis top civilizations in all cycles, or are the environments completely different in each cycle? My understanding is that we go through different interactions. We create what as a smaller individualized unit of source, and therefore a smaller individualized unit of our true energetic selves or higher selves. We create the opportunities. So we might not create anything like what we're experiencing in this particular universe now in the next evolutionary cycle, although it's almost certain that we will be used as individualized units of free will, individualized units of sentience with free will in other aspects of creation that we collectively create together. And so the physical universe might have a completely different feeling to it or genre to it compared to what it is now. One thing is for sure, we will be progressing significantly faster in the next evolutionary cycle than we are now, because we've progressed significantly faster now in this evolutionary cycle than we did in the past one. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Andrew's got another question again. I think of existence as having two parts, being incarnate and being disincarnate in the energetic. But if everything is happening now, I am both incarnate and disincarnate at the same time. How is that possible? Do we ever really leave the energetic? Well, I've just finished the final words of my latest book, and the question you've asked is absolutely where we are. We exist in a linear state because we don't have the communicative bandwidth or the processing power and the frequency to be able to use that processing power whilst we're here incarnate. So the answer is yes, everything does happen concurrently. It didn't always. It's progressed to be that way. So everything did at some point create a linear condition, and we advanced in a linear condition. But it's only when something called the convergence of event space happened, where all event spaces were linked together concurrently, that we got what we now call nowness. But it wasn't always there. So the answer is everything you're doing, will do, have done, should do, could possibly do, etc., is happening now. It never always used to be that way. So in essence, we do. Well, do we ever leave the energetic? Well, let me talk about this then. The physical universe is an energy. So the answer is no, we don't ever really leave the energetic. We just go into different levels of frequency, which gives us different levels of density. That's the way to think of it. Jagdot's got a question. Good. As we're in our third evolutionary cycle, are all the records of evolutionary cycles kept so we could access what our experience was in, for example, the first evolutionary cycle, or does individual sentience merges back to the source at the end of the evolutionary cycle, and starting afresh with the new cycle, and with the tests created without remembrance? My understanding is that we do all recommune with our true energetic selves at the end of an evolutionary cycle, and then the true energetic selves, one by one or in groups, depending upon their evolution, do in fact commune totally with source. So we all become one with source again, totally. We become the source, we are the source. The source then detaches from the volume of space that its sentience is occupying to experience some part of the structure that's the origin is part of, and then reassociates that volume of sentience with another volume of energy, and then repopulates it and compartmentalizes an aspect of that volume of space to allow us to experience, learn and evolve again. It may change the way it does it. It may keep it exactly the same way, but allowing us to experience the space in different ways. Because although you could argue that space should be the same if it's in the same level of structure, I would also consider that it won't be. Because if you take the physical universe as an example, there are some areas in the collective first three frequencies that are just space. empty space as far as we're aware. And then there are galaxies and nebulae and planets within the galaxies and suns, etc., etc. But the higher up the frequencies you go, the more densely populated with similar or same things at higher frequencies the physical universe is. So you could argue that there are different ways in which we might want to experience those different volumes of space, and therefore we would have to do it without prior knowledge. Although our evolutionary level would help us, without doubt, as would the volume, our volume of sentience, which would grow as a function of it. Okay. Next question from Jagdas. 2. Language that is English, Hindi, Punjabi, etc. Does it exist in the energetic? Do we keep the memory set of the languages when learned in the energetic? We don't need verbal languages. We don't need vocal cords. We just communicate with each other by, I think the best way of describing it is thought. It's not quite right because thought is slow. But in essence, we communicate with each other by just knowingness, basically. And that means we don't need any language. We instantaneously know who and what we are by the level of the volume of sentience we've got, the density of sentience or the quality of sentience, and the quality of our evolution as well. So that's how we know who and what we are. And we communicate in many different ways. We could clearly communicate in visuals. We can clearly communicate in knowingness. But there's a whole lot more communicative bandwidth that we can and do use that allows us to communicate in different ways that would completely write off the need for any spoken words. So no, there isn't any languages. We have to relearn them next time we come down here because because it's part of being here. Although there are people who come into these incarnations who are supremely good at picking up languages, and they're polyglots. They probably know 8, 9, 10 different languages in a very unique and perfect way that some of us can't grasp with just one. Okay, good. Next question. An old Hindu practice, sati, in brackets, was an act of Hinduism where the wife would jump in the fire of a purpose burning of a dead husband, because it was believed that after the husband died, the wife would have nothing to live for. In Hinduism, is this not suicide? Yes, it is suicide. And it's, to be honest, I mean, that's a function of where we have been, where the female side of the genre of incarnate humankind has been considered to not have the same level of authority of status, which is complete nonsense. Irrespective of your genre, your gender, irrespective of your sexual preferentation or orientation, we're all one and the same, irrespective of where we come from, what our physical or lineage is. We are all the same. We're just souls in a vehicle incarnating. Okay. Next question from Jagdat. When one is falling asleep, there's a state or level of sleep between falling asleep and in deep sleep. In a particular state or level, one can see lots of images in the mind's eye. They are more like downloads and nothing from memory. Could you provide more insights into it? That's what they are. Sometimes they are downloads and we're spotting them. I can remember years ago when I was a teenager lying in bed and having symbols just fall into me. The closest I can say that they are was almost like Chinese calligraphy, but they weren't. There was something completely different. It felt completely different. And every symbol had a significant amount of, shall I say, programming associated to them. So we do receive insights or downloads when we're in the sort of semi-somnambulistic state, so to speak. If we're wide awake or more aware, we do notice them, but most people don't. Okay. Next question, number 5. When body parts are donated, does the effect of energetic regeneration for the receiver? Do they also receive energetic aspects of the donor as well? Yes, they do. Some aspects of the personality permeate through the gross physical, clearly. And so if somebody's got a heart or a liver or a lung, there was an aspect of the personality or the energies associated with that limb that was donated that's passed on to the body that's receiving those limbs or those body parts or those major organs. So it's quite possible it's likely, and I believe it's been noted, that people do have a slight change in personality if they receive a major organ in a transplant. So it's something that does happen, and you can imagine that at some point we're going to have brain transplants, but that will be an interesting thing to do, because the body that's the brain is going into would have some of the aspects of personality of the previous soul that was in there, and then the brain is a minor organ in comparison to the rest of the body. So it'd be interesting to see what the personality type would be when the brain was transplanted properly. Okay, next question, number 6 from Jagdot. Reaching level 100, meeting the source. If one gets into thoughts of worldly material gains, one would automatically fall down to lower levels, because at the source level, physical material activities are irrelevant. That's right. If we start to get distracted by what I call the shopping list, which is in effect is what we've got to do at work, what we've got to do at home, the jobs at home, maybe we've got to get the kids to school or back from school, or we've got to work out how we get to pay our bills, or we start to have thoughts of, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this or that, or somebody else has got a new car, and we start to plan how we could have a new car. The moment we start to associate ourselves with the gross physical while we're meditating, or wherever we are, we would start to come back down the frequencies, because our focus is here and not where we should be, which is in the other frequencies associated with the multiversal environment when we're meditating, or when we're doing traversing the frequencies. Okay. All right, good question. Good. Next one's from Andrew again. Early Greek philosophers argued that it was impossible for nothing to exist. Today, the defining characteristic of nothing or nothingness is non-existence. Yet I believe the origin has told you in actuality it exists in nothingness. How can an origin exist in something that's defined doesn't exist? Well, in my understanding, and as part of the book I've just finished, which needs to be edited now, by the way, we exist as an aberration. The structured space is an aberration based upon the potential of something. So somethingness within nothingness creates a disharmony, and that creates like a level of stasis. That level of stasis is structured space, and it's that structured space and the energy within it that allow the potential for sentience to develop. So, in essence, nothingness is when it has the potential for somethingness, creates something, and that something is a disharmony effect. Or even though it's so microscopic, or nanoscopic, it's not even worth considering. That does create the potential. Now, from that perspective, we can exist in that potential, and that's the difference. Nothingness is nothing. It's non-structured space. It's just a volume. It's a vast volume that doesn't have dimensions. But potential is something that's always there. And if there's a potential, then that potential can create the possibility of something. And that's why structured space was brought into existence, and gave the possibility of sentience growing through the energies in the Darwinian evolution process. Next question. Are you ever saddened by the fact that you're not on the evolutionary track like the rest of us, considering you're on? Or are you happy to split and get out of the, sorry, or are you happy to split and get out of Dodge for some good ones, some good ones that time comes? So I'm happy to clear off. It doesn't worry me. I just, in this state, I'm not like everybody else. I'm not capable or not allowed to go beyond certain levels of function, because it would be too distracting. If, for instance, we were all able to completely manipulate our environment in a way that we can do when we're in the higher frequencies, we may get addicted to the possibility of acting in a so-called godlike way, and take over the control of the earth in our own way. So, from that perspective, I see understanding or seeking greatness or seeking power is actually a distraction. So from my perspective, I'm quite happy to be where I am now, and it doesn't bother me if I evolve or not. It's the interaction with people like you that counts, and the sharing of knowledge, in which is such a humble thing to be able to do, and there's other people who can do it as well. But is, in some respects, is exciting. So if the ability to share knowledge in this way is exciting, that's potentially also karmic, because it's an addiction to being here. So I have to think about that in some detail in the background. But yeah, I'm not saddened. No, I quite enjoy being here with everybody and being part of it. And I do know that this is my last incarnation, and I should be watching with great expectation to see how we all progress over how humankind progresses, because there's such potential here. It's just we just don't realise it. Vanny asks the question: you have answered my question that we are predestined and may not have free will. So then, what is the purpose or motivation of meditation? Doing good. We place ourselves in an environment that is potentially addictive, because it gives us a lot of different sensory and thought processes that are low frequency that we have to navigate around. So the whole point of being here is to be able to experience, learn, and evolve in one of the most harshest and difficult environments in the multiverse, specifically with individualized free will. It's easy with collective will because everybody's in collective will is working together in harmony, in synchronicity. But when you've got individualized free will, it's very easy to get distracted, as we all know. So the motivation of doing meditation and being of service and being good is to be here and master it. And once we've mastered it, we have a significant level of evolutionary progression that's bestowed upon us. Where we are now, it's something called evolutionary tension or evolutionary stasis. That creates evolutionary tension, which means although we don't really evolve so much here, because it's difficult, we get caught up in what's happening here. We get addicted to being here. We get all the different aspects of, addiction being karma, in terms of material wealth, status, thought processes, being in control of others, for example, having lots and lots of money, and all the things you can do with that. In essence, if we can master that and have none of it affecting us, and we can just be here but not be of here, then the use of meditation, which allows us to gain a little bit of extra communicative bandwidth that makes us realize that, is really important, because it accelerates the ability for us to move beyond the need to incarnate, because we can work out a karma potentially in a couple of lifetimes or even one. Good. Jim's got a question here. I get the impression through your recent books that the may be more proactive in the future and in the origins of evolution. Is this true? They do have a function. In essence, they are also helping the origin expand its own evolutionary potential and its own sentient volume as well. But like everything else, they will become part of the when the fully populates structured space with its sentience, and as a result of that, as a significantly increased quality of evolution. As Pope, namaste, going everybody. May you share what is the significance of eclipses, especially in the energetic point of view? Eclipses they're simply a function of the rotation of planets, and we know this. It's because we've tracked them for quite a long time, decades, maybe even 100 years. But energetically, what happens is it also creates a shadow, not a light-based shadow, but a cosmic energy-based shadow. So energetically, they could create a condition where the energies that we normally get and we can absorb through our chakras, which energize the energy templates that allows us to manifest the human form in this gross physical and spiritual physical aspect. But it causes the potential for us to be energy hungry. So when we have an eclipse, we don't get the sun energy, the cosmic energy that comes from the sun, which is important. And this is why you find out that in Hindu texts and other texts, it's good to have sunbaths. Now, it's good to have sunbaths for only a few minutes these days because the ozone layer is not so good. So, but we need to have the energy from the sun to help us energize ourselves. We don't just get energy from food, from physical food. So an eclipse is basically a shadow in the energies that we would normally get, basically. So they're not good for us as such energetically, because we do need the energies to be able to perpetuate the human form. But fortunately, they don't last long enough to cause any major problems. Eliza's got a question now. Do souls travel together over time or event spaces? If so, are some of your students part of a soul group that does so? There are souls that work together. They're called sympathetic souls. They don't always work together for a long period. They could be 2 or 3 or 4 incarnations, or they could be one incarnation. And some of them I've come across as being students of mine or friends, and some of them are people who are students of other people as well. And some of them are just masters in their own right. So it's quite common that for people who are in these sorts of positions where you are in a humble and honored position where you can help others by sharing knowledge, there are times when those individuals are also there to help out and help broadcast the knowledge as well. So they won't be part of a soul group. They'll be part of just a group of souls that are sympathetic souls because they worked together before. A soul group is souls from the same higher self, basically, and they would be, and each individual soul would be classified as being a soulmate as a result of that. Right. I could see this one coming from Ola. Was convergence of event space first done at the origin level or event space, or is it also done lower down as the curators do that, the event space manipulation for us? This is beyond the curators. It's a function of event space. It's a function of event space and the origin working together, really. But the convergence of event space happens, or happened, or will happen when there is a certain level of, or should say, a certain level of or I'll start again. When there is a certain number of levels of structure space occupied by the origin sentience that allows the potential for these different locations to have not only sentience but event space associated with them, because event space only exists and it can only function if the sentience in the same space, because it responds to the potential of a different way to respond to a circumstance or environment by sentience, or the potential for, or the possibility of, or the possible possibility of the possible possibility of the potential for, etc., etc., etc. So basically, it's above the curator level, well above the curator level, and well beyond where we are potentially now. Okay, I've got the 10-minute warning. Okay, Daniel. So good question. Thank you, Ola. Daniel. Am I seeing this correctly? How can so many souls come into life on this planet and perform so poorly? Do they lose their way? Do they want to do bad things, or are they in error? Or am I to see this differently? Are these lawless people performing for me for some known reason? It seems that we are going down in consciousness quite far. We should be able to turn this around. We can turn it around by collectively, there's people like you and me, showing how to think, behave, and act, and not respond in a negative or an angry way. Sharing our wealth with people. I give about 10% of my income to charities on a monthly basis. I was in Switzerland with myself and Celia were in Switzerland, and we had some people come up to us saying that they hadn't got any money and could they have some food. And we were in a market, we were in a food hall. So rather than give them the money, we bought them the food. So it's about being a good example and showing what people who are a good example can do for others. That's most important. Sometimes those souls do want to experience so-called bad lives because they want to experience the balance of having a previous good life. So when we have people who are murderers, maybe in the previous life they were good persons who were murdered by a murderer. So it's all about the yin and the yang and the balance associated with being in various different incarnations, and maybe even working out karma with another incarnate entity where they've reciprocated the response or the experience in a previous life. And Daniel's saying to everybody, happy Easter and spring equinox. Happy Easter to you as well. Think of all those Easter eggs soon. Chocolate is karmic. It's very addictive. Okay, another question from Andrew. You said once that you might write a book on antichrists. This makes me think about Hitler. Not only did he torture and murder millions, but he also committed suicide. That seems karmically heavy stuff. I can't see this because I've got a heavy. Okay, this seems karmically heavy at one life as one life can get. Have you communicated with this aspect? Was he confused by his actions when he crossed over into the energetic? And has he recovered from this extremely heavy incarnation? Apologies for reading it wrong. There's a little piece of Zoom which hangs around over some of the text, and it blocks out the text so you can't read it properly. As it happens, no, I haven't communicated with this entity. Will I? That's the next book. And I don't know how big it will be, but I'm going to look and see if we can communicate through this entity about the things that happened in its reign as an antichrist. We're also looking at the other antichrist figures in the rest of known history on Earth, and we might even get one or two that we don't know about as well from previous prehistory situations. So that's the next book, basically. And I was talking about the potential with a rather old German friend of mine who was born in the war, and he said it's going to be really interesting to read this book. So he said I hope I live long enough to be able to read this, because it sounds like it's going to be good to understand the higher concept of why these things happen. Okay, Fanny says, this is your last incarnation, so what happens to you after this? I go back to the Om. I stay in the energies, but I've still got this thing about seeing how this particular location within the physical universe works. So I don't suppose I'll disappear straight away into some other part of the multiverse or beyond this. I think we're going to, what I can work out, we're going to allow a little bit of decompression time, so to speak, where I can look around and see what's happening and see how. So, because I'm interested to see how the other souls in the other frequencies within the physical universe, who've also been allowed to have individualized free will in another location, significantly far away from the Earth, which doesn't affect it, have also done. Okay, Andrew again. If we are sentient beings, and if memory is a faculty of sentience, why do we not remember the time that we were born up until about the ages of 4? Because we're in and out of the body. When we come down this low, the communicative bandwidth is so low between us and our higher self that it's almost like talking to the world's fastest supercomputer by chiseling out words on a stone tablet. That's about as fast as the communication is. So you can understand why people start to forget who and what they are, because they become body associated rather than associated with where they've come from. It's a little bit like having sensory deprivation, but on a massive scale. And so we start to forget because we become associated with our very close environment, which is the human form. And and 4 years old, we're still moving in and out of the body up until about then. So it's when we come down, it's such a shock. I mean, some of you might notice that when you wake up suddenly in the morning, you wake up so fast that your heart's sort of beating, about 200 beats per minute. And that's because we sometimes have resistance in coming back here, because we know how hard it is and how difficult it is to animate the body, and also to communicate what's happening around us or talk to other people. So we do sometimes not like coming back, specifically if we've got challenges to meet while we're here, and we know how hard those challenges are. So it's quite common for us to come slamming back into our body, and the heart sort of bursts into life again, and it goes at about 250 beats per minute. So that's why we basically wake up that way, because we don't want to come back, and it could be a bit of stress. Next one's from Vanny. We've only got a couple of minutes left now, so we've got to be careful with the time. Next one's from Vanny. Could we have a good result by just telling ourselves that we're not a body but a soul? Yeah, I mean, that's a fundamental statement, that is. When we start to realize what we are is a soul in a body, the same way as that we would have a hire car, you know, then the hire car means nothing to us. We just use the car, we go to it, we have a journey, we give the car back. If we all recognize that, then it wouldn't matter whether we were black, white, ginger, green, you know, male, female, all the genders in between that we're starting to classify now. It wouldn't matter in the slightest. We would know that we're all trying to work hard to evolve, and we'd help each other, because we'd also know that if we can work hard and evolve, then we can reduce the amount of time we need to stay here to incarnate significantly and move beyond the need to incarnate. So that's right. Yeah. I think we need to put this as the last question. Is it possible to feel your soul coming back into your body after sleeping? Feel it radiating into soul seat, and then feel it radiating into Tantien, and then in the soul seat, and the core star. The core star is a juncture, by the way. The soul comes down the Hara line, goes to the core star, and the aspect of the energy associated with the soul goes to the Tantien, and the aspect and the sentience goes to the soul seat. It is possible, yes. It's totally possible to feel it all. When you've worked on yourself for a long time, you can feel all this stuff going on, and you can also feel how difficult it is to move the body sometimes. It can be a bit frightening for people when they suddenly have this what we call sleep paralysis. They're back in the body, they're totally aware and awake, but the body doesn't work. And it's because we haven't properly integrated yet before we become fully aware. Right, Emma's got a question. Are we still dropping in the frequencies right now? The answer to that is yes, but we're bottoming out. I'm seeing it's sort of hitting the bottom within the next 6 months, and then starting to move along the bottom for quite some time. I truly felt we were moving up by now. In fact, I thought we were moving up last year or the year before, but we haven't. But we're starting to recognise that we can't continue to think, behave, and act in the way we are, and so the world is changing, but slowly. It's like a big boat. A big boat takes a long time to turn, and so is the world. Well, we're down to below a minute now, so I'm going to thank you all for attending. Thank you all for your questions. Don't forget, there's more questions answered before the recording, so the questions on the recording are more than what we've got now. So God's love to you all, and namaste to you all, and looking forward to seeing you in the next Satsanga. Welcome to the meditation side of this World Satsanga. And what we're going to do now is to have a meditation based upon tolerance. As you know from the lecture, I was talking about basically all roads lead to source, and therefore all religions lead to source, and therefore neither religion is better than the other. They're all the same, provided we strip away the human side of it. So let's just consider tolerance. Let's get ourselves into a meditation posture. If you like to sit down on the ground, you can put yourself in any form of the full lotus, half lotus, or just crossing your legs. But make sure that your back is straight and your neck is in line with your back, and your hands are palm uppermost on your upper thighs. If you're sitting in a chair, make sure it's a straight backed chair with your feet flat on the ground to ground you. The coccyx and the bottom close to the corner of the chair at the bottom, and then your back straight and your neck straight in alignment with the back. Again, put your hands palm uppermost on your upper thighs. And in both ways of sitting, make sure that your eyes are closed, and your closed eye vision, or your focus, is gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. The basis of tolerance is the recognition that everything and everyone is part of source. And that includes us. So any individual is part of source, and we're part of source. Any environment is part of source, and we're part of source. Any thought process is part of source, and we're part of source. Any of the flora or fauna, any of the planets, the systems, the galaxies, the universes within the multiverse are part of source, and we're part of source. So when we find ourselves being judgmental or not liking or being angry against something or someone, don't you think we're being angry or judgmental against ourselves? Because all of that is part of source, and we're part of source. Everything is one. So just consider that from the human perspective, if we do something detrimental to our environment, we're doing something detrimental to ourselves. We wouldn't do detrimental things to ourselves normally. So why would we do something detrimental to our environment? If we are communicating with somebody or having a dialogue with somebody, irrespective of the circumstance and the environment that circumstance is within, if we are angry at somebody, then actually we're angry at ourselves because they are part of source and we are part of source. So we have to be tolerant, recognizing that every human being, every animal, every part of the fauna and the flora of the planet is part of us and we're part of it. So when we get into a state of annoyance, we should consider that as part of source in the incarnate state, it's also part of us in the incarnate state. And it's also finding a way to experience, learn, and evolve in a different way to us. Maybe the circumstance they have chosen, which may be a difficult circumstance, or created a different personality, is a function of something that an advanced soul has chosen to experience because it's a difficult incarnation and therefore creates an accelerated level of evolutionary progression. So based upon that, we should not judge another. We should be in more understanding of another. For example, just because somebody's got tattoos, it doesn't mean they're a nasty person. It just means they like to decorate their body. It's not something all of us do. Not something some of us would want to do. But it is something that some do want to do. And they may be the most spiritual person on the planet. They may give countless thousands of pounds or dollars towards charities. They may even set up schools to help people in disenfranchised environments. So we have to consider that what we see in people isn't exactly what they are, even though they may be doing what we would classify as being detrimental things. We can lead through being a good example. We can lead by illustrating how we can think, behave, and act in a higher frequency way and illustrate how that benefits us, how we become a calmer individual and more satisfied individual, not materialistically linked, not status based, not money based, not possession based, not being better than somebody else based. So tolerance is not just an empty word, it's a whole state of beingness, a recognition that everything and everyone is part of source, just as we are part of source. and therefore it's part of us, or is us. So when we interact with somebody in an adversarial way, we have to stand back a bit and realize that at the end of the day, they are just a soul, as we are, in a vehicle, a body. In this instance, is a biological body of a certain frequential state that they're using to be able to navigate through this incarnation to assist them and therefore source in accruing evolutionary content. And they've chosen a particular way of doing so, which may be challenging, but it may be very easy. We all have challenging and we all have easy incarnations. Most of the time we have an incarnation which is a little bit of both. So rather than being judgmental about somebody's thought process, somebody's lifestyle, somebody's way of interacting with people, somebody's way of considering that they are connecting to source by using one of the countless religions that have grown up as a function of one person originally being able to connect to source with a particular process that they've either developed or been given by source. But that's okay. Why would we not be tolerant of somebody just because they come from a different part of the world? Just because they have a different genome, a different color of skin, a different color of hair, different color of eyes, different way of speaking. When in essence, they're part of us and we're part of them. Why would we discriminate when effectively we're discriminating against ourselves? Tolerance is the road to understanding. And when we understand, it's part of the road towards enlightenment. So let's just consider these words. Sink into the words. Be the words. Let them be part of you. Let the recognition, the tolerance, acceptance, beingness, inclusion, acceptance are all part of the road to self-awareness, to enlightenment, to connection with source, and ultimately the ability to navigate through an incarnation without accruing any form of karma, any form of attraction to or addiction to anything, whether it's a thought, a behavior, or an action. Just allow yourself to consider that everything and everyone is you, and you are everything and everyone. When you fully understand this and feel this, you feel connected to everybody. Everybody is your sister, everybody is your brother, everybody is you. You feel the oneness. You feel the beingness. You feel the togetherness. Feel the joy associated with recognizing that everything and everyone, irrespective of their thought processes, their desires, their way of being, their way of dressing, their way of presenting themselves, the way in which they decide to choose a route to source or God, is as valid as yours. We don't need to force ours on them. They don't need to force theirs on us. It's just another route. So feel the joy in recognizing that everything and everyone is you, and you are everything and everyone. And everything and everyone is source. Hang on to this feeling of joy, this deep connectivity with everything and everyone and source. Hang on to it, remember it, remember how you connected with it in this meditation. And as you come back into the room, you slowly open your eyes, keep it with you. If it starts to slip away, go back into the meditation and start again and reconnect. Well, thank you for listening to this World Satsanga on the 27th of March, 2024. It's been a delight working with you. I look forward to working with you again in April. God's love to you all, and namaste. Did you see the aliens in Crete?